Hello everyone and welcome to a really complicated game you will enjoy immensely. It's from the match Ukraine versus Norway that we covered a few days ago, but this is the one game that eluded us, and even though a lot of you guys have requested it, but now let's check it out as it does deserve to be shown. It's Magnus with the white pieces against Ukrainian Grandmaster 20-year-old Kirill Shevchenko. Like I said, brutal game. Let's dive straight into it. So Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6, c4, and now c6, going for the sort of a Slav-Indian defense combo. Bishop to f4 by Magnus, and now queen to b6. So not really a London system, but this could be considered somewhat of a defense to the London system. So it's a very interesting one. It brings the queen out into the game early, and you're already putting pressure on that b2 pawn. B2 pawn. So Magnus defends it, queen to d2, and then now knight to e4, attacking the queen here, queen to c2, and now d5. We have e3 now, and here comes bishop to f5, now threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. And here there is a game where queen to b3 was played that just offers a queen trade, but here we have bishop to d3, and it is now as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how black can go about this. So first d captures on c4. Of course, we want to get the bishop out of that d3 square. Bishop captures on e4, and now bishop captures on e4. Queen captures on e4, and queen captures on b2. So here Shevchenko is going after the rook on a1, but not really, as you'll see. So here bishop captures on b8 by Magnus, and now comes queen to c1 with check. If you play queen captures on a1 right away, then queen to c2, and everything is perfectly fine. Black will have to play c3 just to try and get the queen out of the game, as for the moment the queen is pretty much stuck on a1. So instead, after this bishop captures on b8, we have queen to c1 with check, king to e2. This is the only move for Magnus, and now comes rook captures on b8, and now we have knight to f3, attacking the queen and pretty much offering a full rook on h1. But if black declines the rook, for example, if some like queen to b2, we're just going to continue developing, and we are up a full piece. Of course, this will be completely winning for Magnus. So here, Shevchenko has to accept this seemingly free gift, but a few things in life and in chess are free, especially when you're playing against Magnus. So here Magnus gives up the rook, queen captures on h1 is played. Now queen to e5, attacking the rook on b8. We have rook to d8, and now the star move, knight to e1. So the queen on e5 was played not only to attack the rook, but also to guard the h2 pawn, and now the knight on e1 guards the g2 pawn, and there is no way for the black queen to get out of that h1 square. So what does this mean for our game? Is the game over? Is Magnus just up a queen now? How can Shevchenko go about this position? Well, he starts with h5. Of course, he will not just resign. He wants to bring his rook into the game. And we've seen the game where young Pragyananda had his queen trapped for pretty much the entire game, and then he ended up winning. So, of course, you have to try. Knight to c3. Now comes rook to h6. And now rook to b1. Magnus goes after the b7 pawn. So b6 defending, and now comes pawn to h3. And even though it seems like there's no way for the black queen to get into the game, it was necessary to play rook to d1 here, because even though the d4 pawn seems to be protected, not really, as you'll see in the game. So here h3 was played, now the queen no longer has to keep an eye on the h2 square. Now the g2 pawn defends the h3 pawn, but you still need your queen on this diagonal. If you move your queen away from this diagonal, then black can just play queen h2 and bring the queen back into the game. So here rook to e6, attacking Carlsen's queen, and now queen to c7. We still have to keep an eye on that h2 square, otherwise the black queen just goes back into the game. g6, preparing to bring the bishop into the game, and now comes queen back to g3. Now, to understand queen to g3, we first have to see what happens if Magnus just plays rook to d1, and you can see that there's no way for white to put any pressure on the black king, even though the black queen is completely out of the game. Black's plan is very simple. He's going to play bishop to g7, and now you don't really have a move with white. What are you going to play? If you play something like rook to b1, we can play c5. And now after something like d5, okay, you can attack the rook. Now the rook comes to d6. And this is basically what we wanted to have. Now the queen no longer guards the h2 square. We can bring our queen into the game. And we don't really need to worry about anything. If knight comes to e4, we just capture on d5. And then we completely bust open the d file. And then we are completely winning. So here Magnus said, all right, I can't play something like that. I have to go back. Queen to g3. I really have to keep an eye on that h2 square, but now I've pretty much given it up for you. But just in case I haven't, feel free to pause the video here and try to find the absolute winning idea for Shevchenko here while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on realizing that we have to win this diagonal over for us. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, of course, the move is h4. So congratulations to everyone who spotted this. In the game, Magnus captured on h4, but other moves aren't all that much better. If you play queen f4, we just continue with the g5, and then of course, if queen g4, we've won the h file for ourselves, or a queen captures on g5 for that matter. So there's no way to keep control of this diagonal. And if queen back to c7, then it's very simple. We'll say we just move the bishop, and next whatever white plays, we're just gonna play queen to g1, and now okay, we have this insane pressure on the e3 pawn. We're just gonna start capturing, and that's it. There's no way for white to defend this. So after h4, Magnus captured on h4, but now we have queen to h2, and the black queen re-enters the game. g3, Magnus says, but not so quickly. We're still gonna keep the queen on the h2 square, but now bishop to g7. We have knight to f3 attacking the queen, queen to g2, and here it seems like Magnus has a way of keeping the black queen on the on the g2 square. For example, if knight back to e1, how do you save the queen here? If you go queen h2, we just repeat knight f3, then you go back, we go back knight to a1. If you go queen to g1, again, we repeat knight to f3, queen g2, and knight to e1. However, and that's why I said that the d4 pawn was extremely weak, even though it's defended by the pawn and by the queen, there is rook captures on d4, and that's why the repetition is not possible. Now we're attacking Carlsen's queen, and there is nothing useful that white can do here. We can capture on d4, but now we just trade down. Bishop captures on d4, knight captures on g2, bishop captures on c3, and after rook to c1, we're gonna move the bishop. Let's say rook captures on c4, king d7, defend the c6 pawn one more time, and you get this endgame where it's a bishop against a knight. Black is up one pawn, but the game is completely winning for black. Black has a passed c pawn, and it's a 3-1 advantage on the queen side. Also, the bishop can play on both sides of the board. The knight really can't, and this will be impossible to hold. So Magnus, of course, spots this, and he plays queen to h7. But now here just rook to f6, and he was in this position on move 23 that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game, and a wonderful, wonderful victory for Kirill Shevchenko, who grabs a valuable point for Team Ukraine. But since we already covered this match, you guys know that Ukraine won every match. Four rounds were played, and all 4 rounds were won by Ukraine. I believe it was 3-1, then 2.5, 1.5, then again 3-1, then 2.5, 1.5, or maybe not in that order, but those were the points, and they've won by a very nice margin. But yeah, here after rook to f6, Magnus resigned, and that's just it. There's no way to defend. The knight is hanging. If you move the knight, then the f2 pawn is hanging, and even if you try giving up some material, we're just gonna capture, and after, let's say, king to e1, we're just gonna play king f8, defend our bishop, and it's, I mean, there's just too much material for black. Well, white is down a whole rook. So yeah, after rook to f6, Magnus resigned, and a brilliant, brilliant victory for 20-year-old Ukrainian grandmaster Kirill Shevchenko, who takes down the world champion. But again, just a very, very, very impressive game. I mean, this is move like this is the bishop captures on b8 is move 10 already. On move 10, there's a rook hanging. You can play queen to c1. There is so much stuff happening, and then this idea of just knight to f3 by Magnus. It's a brilliant idea, and maybe with maybe with absolute precise engine play, maybe you can hold this, but Shevchenko proved that the queen was never really trapped, and it was only a matter of time before the queen gets out of the cage. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Many of you have requested this one, so there you have it. Another example of a trapped queen breaking free. I would like to thank Michael McConnell, Nagarjuna Ponugoti, Suresh K, Paul Hunermund, and Michael Kalberer for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.